10 o'clock. We do have a quorum, so I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order at 10 o'clock, 10:01. And let's see. Lisa, do you want to go through protocols on participation?
Yes, thank you. City of Monterey is committed to the safe attendance of its public meetings. Masks are recommended regardless of vaccination status, except those who are younger than 2 years old or have a medical condition that prevents wearing a mask. We ask that attendees in council chambers keep phones and devices muted to prevent audio interference and feedback with this hybrid meeting. Information on participating in this meeting and providing public comment, including remotely by Zoom, is available on the meeting agenda online at isearchmonterey.org. Remote commenters will be muted until it is your turn to speak, and a timer will be shown on the screen. If you're connected on Zoom, the timer is accurate with no delay. Thank you. And I do have one more announcement. I just wanted to introduce our new finance admin, Kaylin Rosemarian. Kaylin will be taking over running these meetings, so you'll be getting emails from Kaylin moving forward on the agenda packet, minutes, and point of contact. So welcome, Kaylin.
Welcome. All right. Then let's move on to our agenda for this morning. We're going to start with approval of our minutes from our last October 14th.
Shall we start with a roll call?
Sorry.
Sorry.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
It's not, you're right.
So we can't do it.
Okay, let's see. Patrick Aldinger,
Here.
Justin Chang,
Here.
Carol Trebajian, Rick Hoyer,
Here.
Payam Ostovar.
Here.
Thank you.
Good timing.
Thank you very much for that. All right, now on to approval of the minutes from October 14th, 2024. And I would like to request one correction on the item number 7, agenda item number 7. We have a motion made by Rick Hoyer reflected in the minutes, and Rick Hoyer was not at the meeting.
I guess I was here in spirit and that I don't know.
I'll correct that.
And I'm guessing that must have been me instead.
Yes.
I don't remember that specifically, but I know one of us certainly made that motion.
I'll confirm. I'll check the video.
And unless we have any other questions on the minutes, I'd be looking for a motion to approve those, please.
Yeah, I'll move to approve with an amendment to number 7 as stated by the chair.
And a second on that?
Second.
Any discussion? Do we have any public comment?
No public comment.
Okay, then we can take a roll call vote, please.
Rick Aldinger,
Yes.
Justin Chang,
Yes.
Carol Trebajian, Rick Hoyer,
Staying since I wasn't there.
Payam Ostovar.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And at this point, we'd like to ask for any general public comment on anything that is under the jurisdiction of the Measure P&S Oversight Committee, but not on today's agenda. Do we have any such public comment?
No public comment.
Thank you. Then we are ready then for agenda item number 2, Measure P&S Oversight Committee Purpose and Minutes Policy. And I think this was requested, Payam. You requested some guidance, clarification, just information on the purview of the committee and role and purpose. And I know that in our packet, there is an attachment going over that. And do we have any questions or comments on that document? I have a couple. Just for my own clarification, just so I understand, and I'm sure we've been told this before, and I should know, but what is a traffic calming measure?
Rick knows.
So traffic calming is generally a term used to reduce speeds or volumes of traffic on primarily residential streets, but it could be any streets. I believe the city has a traffic calming program or a policy. So traffic calming devices would be like bulb outs, trying to think. Different
Stop
treatment-
signs?
No, stop signs is not a
It's
traffic calming. but
Roundabouts, roundabouts,
Traffic circle.
traffic circles, basically everything. Most of the neighborhoods have a traffic calming or traffic plan.
Yeah.
Which specifies what kinds of projects can be done where to do it. But yeah, so for example, Casanova Oak Knoll, you go up, what's it, Casanova Street, you hit that roundabout right after the
Mhm,
Foxy Lady.
Mhm.
That's a traffic calming plan. Or you go into Kona and you get to the entrance sign for it in the middle with the center median. That's what.
Correct.
Basically, if a street was designed that is causing people to drive too fast over the speed limit because it looks like you should, essentially it's an improperly designed street. They try and mitigate that by introducing traffic calming measures, bulb outs, et cetera, to make it appear smaller. There's easier ways of doing that. Even just paint will often be a traffic calming measure because it makes the street look narrower, which brings me to kind of some of these questions too. This is very helpful. But if that traffic calming measure is already planned for, essentially because I think we discussed this before, if it's already in the details, liking on the term for that, it's in the code of some sort. So we've upgraded our standards to the standards to have a traffic calming measure in a certain location. Would that then be covered
So
if it's
generally, we try to incorporate it into our maintenance projects. For example, bulb outs, if we're doing ADA curb ramps, and the opportunity is there to actually kind of do the bulb out with the intersection. Sometimes we need to just to even get
correct?
a landing area for the pedestrian ramp. We'd go ahead and do that as part of the ADA upgrade improvement project that's Measure PS fundable. Same with if it's just traffic striping or lane markings. Once we resurface the street and we have a blank slate, we take that opportunity to just go ahead and put in the paint to either kind of narrow the lanes to have a calming effect, or make striping improvements once we have that blank canvas. So we try to bring in the traffic calming elements as we're doing these projects, definitely when it's consistent with the neighborhood plans.
Yep.
But I don't think we go above and beyond maybe those two specific examples where we do the bulb outs and the paint. If it's something,
Typically with ADA,
yeah, if it's something different like radar feedback signs, that wouldn't be covered as part of this program. But if we're doing something as part of like an ADA upgrade project, and we have the opportunity to do a bulb out that has the traffic calming effect, but also giving us the ADA compliant ramps, we'll go ahead and do the bulb outs.
and that would include speed bumps, for instance, also.
No, the city has, as part of the traffic calming policy, speed bumps isn't kind of an eligible traffic calming device in the city of Monterey. Other cities do use speed bumps or speed cushions or different forms of vertical deflection, but in the city of Monterey, speed bumps is excluded from that traffic calming program.
When are they used? Are they just
Speed
excluded?
bumps?
Yeah,
In Monterey?
Not in Monterey.
yeah. So they're just not.
Maybe parking lots, private parking lots.
Yeah, but not for the city. The city
Not on
doesn't
city
implement
streets.
that.
Yeah.
So I bring it up just because I know in the neighborhood where I'm in New Monterey, a bunch of neighbors are asking for some kind of calming measure near a park. And I guess that's good to know that maybe speed bumps are not amongst that. And if that's before Measure PNS comes through, because it hasn't yet on that street. So that's helpful. So again, this is helpful. I think that and I don't know if we're going to get to that. The thing I was really hoping to understand better is the standards, and if we as a city and as a committee looking at this, if we ask for a verification that we think our codes, our standards are up to snuff, have been reviewed before implementing Measure PNS aspects. The two specific ones I asked for more specificity on was slip resistance, usually for in particular pedestrian crossings, those stripings, and then also the drains. That's a once in a lifetime move, because we're not going to do that for another 100 years, probably replace these. I mean, and it's an expensive effort. And so if we didn't review that, we think those are the appropriate standards, then we're not allowed to make that upgrade, so to speak, with Measure P&S.
Sure. I guess I'll take it in two parts. So the skid resistant paint and crosswalks, I did, after you'd asked that question, I think two meetings ago, touch base with the city's former city traffic engineer, just to ask him about what specifications they were using in the crosswalks. There is an anti-skid resistant. There's tiny glass like bead particles that are sprinkled in there. We could, perhaps ask a consultant to do a deeper dive and kind of review what our current specification is versus other recommended best practices. But there is some sort of anti-skid resistant already incorporated into those specifications. The other consideration with the storm drain, I think that's a little heavier of a lift. That's something that we could look at, but right now I really don't have the budget or the capacity to do a standard plan update. We do have our standard plan drawings available on the city's website. So if that was something you wanted to kind of look a little closer at to see what standards we have, what we incorporate into our kind of our standard, our projects, it's available on the website. We do have maybe some standard plans that are getting a little out of date that need to be updated as budget allows. But a task like that, I'd need to hire a consultant, put together a work order, have them kind of run through it. And right now I just don't have any funding set aside for that or staff capacity.
So my question, I guess, to the committee and to you, is that worth us saying pause on drains while we do find the funding? And because again, that's a once in a lifetime thing. The paint, that's something that can happen. I mean, I've seen them do it recently, actually, on foam. I think they were just painting and spreading that's really, those beads are really just for reflectivity. They don't operate so much as they do some, but that doesn't last. Also because it's just paint. If you want it to last, it's thermoplastic. You drop that on there, and in particular, it would seem heavy traffic areas is where that's deserved. Again, I'm going to lay that on you all. These are observations that, again, the paint is something, again, PG uses thermoplastic for their pedestrian striping and things like that. It lasts years instead of months like our current paint does. So it's a lower cost initially for us, but greater cost, greater loss, and all those things. Now, again, that's one we probably just move forward as is, let you all, you've heard our opinions on that, my opinion in particular. You address that moving forward. The drains are one I wonder, again, that's a once in a lifetime change that we're making. And if we didn't look at those standards before whole hog changing all of them in the city, that seems like a pretty big miss. And I wonder if it's worth requesting a pause on that before we've seen that's standard has been called to attention to and made to be upgraded. When I was on the neighborhood association, this came up a lot. People,
So I don't want to interrupt, but I think I'm going to, and
no, that's fine.
Respectfully, and please, anyone correct me if I'm wrong here. And what I heard the request, we want to understand what is the purview, what is the responsibility of this committee. And as I understand it, we are tasked with ensuring that the money is received into this project and is accounted for as Measure P&S money. And then maybe, well, just as importantly, to make sure that that money is spent on projects that fall under the P&S language. And that is, it broadly specified in this document. But for the purposes of your question, the way I see it, Payam, is that we are not an advisory committee.
Mhm.
We're not suggesting, although we do bring up topics for discussion, they are more conversational in my mind than anything else. We're not here to manage the projects. I guess I anyway make an assumption that when the city is engaging in projects and choosing engineers or construction companies, that they are doing so in a manner that makes sure we're meeting all current applicable standards and regulations for that project. And I certainly get, on the storm drains in particular, I certainly get your concern on that. And to me, that is a discussion more appropriate for maybe a city council public comment or somewhere where it can be forwarded to whomever it needs to go to make sure that discussion happens. I guess we can ask that here. We can say, hey, this might be a good idea. But again, that's really not our job here. And I want to, I want to stay within the guardrails that we've been given when we have these discussions.
Yeah, I have a brief comment. I mean, I think we're talking a little bit about the power dynamics of the committee. I don't think we have authority to command staff. We have advisory ability.
Yeah,
you
never.
can say whatever you want, right?
Yeah.
Just publicly. But in terms of the actual authority that you might be able to wield is you can withhold your vote. Like that's sort of as far as you can go. Like that's probably where the limits of your power are. Like if you're really not happy with something, that's about all you can do.
Well, I don't see where, again, the discussions that we have here, the action we take, that withholding a vote, anyone can vote how they wish. That's certainly true. But what we're voting on is, again, was the money spent correctly?
I agree.
Rick,
Well,
you lean forward.
Well, yeah, just to clarify, as a committee, we have zero power. Basically, we are after the fact it's spent review and we can say, oh, you did it wrong, you didn't match. But at the end of the day, if staff says, yes, we did, and guess what? Unless we want to go public and raise a stink, that's the way it is. Now, that said, I think it would be good to agendize having a note go to the city council suggesting that they allocate some resources and our funds to look at the standards, because we are spending a whole lot of money on storm drains, and be nice to make sure that they're actually being spent and built a way that's the most current way, because city's building to its current standards, which may or may not be the way to do it these days.
Yeah, and
That's
that
no
was-
negative or anything else. It's just, I think that's, yes, could we suggest
It's
and do a letter to the
conversation outside
council?
this committee.
And because it came up here? Yeah, I think we should.
And I was looking too, at the end of each meeting, we have committee member comment section. And I just reviewed that. Members may ask a question for clarification, make a brief announcement, or make a brief report on their activities. In addition, a committee member or the committee may provide a referral to staff or other resources for factual information. So to me, that still doesn't address what Payam is bringing up, that, how do we formally go about that? And so the question that comes up, can we add that as an agenda item? Do we want to? Is that, again, is that
Very different things, but yeah.
yeah, is that why we're here? And do we want to, spend the time to go over things here that might be better addressed in a different format or forum?
Thank you. I think that's what I was trying to get at. To me, it seems a little bit more of a gray area, because we are trying to review if we think the funding is being spent appropriately. And to me, am I mistaken in that? I mean, it's partially, if
Appropriately
particular,
to the language of the ordinance.
It's not
If the
appropriately as it is to the project does it meet what the voters voted on? In a
correct,
sense. So
correct.
is it a sidewalk project that qualifies? Is it a thing, but not how was that sidewalk or let's say stone drain project done.
Or
isn't
design.
part of it or designed. It's a storm drain project that fits the criteria that it could be worked on by the money. That's basically what we're voting on, unfortunately.
Correct. But I mean, we are basically representing our community, and we are brought to this committee because of that experience with our community, and perhaps some of our professional expertise and things like that as well. So it doesn't seem like efficiently there isn't really a better way to have our community's voice heard except through us in some of these ways. Now, I agree with you with that language, et cetera. But if we have potential concerns of how that funding is being spent appropriately for long-term things that are affected by this, most voters, myself included, the language that was written in that was very minimal as to what that was. Maybe if I did a deep dive, I could have read these details that it's only as the standards are currently written, but who's going to do that? And who's going to go actually look at the standards and see if they agree with those? Most people don't have the expertise to do that anyway. And so I think that is why we're here, I think, is to help the community do that. Now, whether or not that means we draft a note to council, I think that would be in our purview to do that. You may say no and vote no and say you write it personally if you want, but I think it's stronger if it comes with agreement from us, which it may not. And so I guess that would be me maybe later in the meeting in that moment suggest that we do that and ask a vote.
Well, I will say that I do admire your advocacy, and I think you're doing it in the right place. And from what we learned last meeting, you're advocating to the right person. From what we understand, you have discretion over standards. So,
But no funding.
It would
So-
still have to go through a city council resolution for formal adoption, but I oversee the city's engineering division. And so the standard plans was something that would come through my workshop. And I hear you, and it's definitely on my radar. I'm not just trying to dismiss you and
Totally.
say
No,
that,
yeah.
it's not something we're going to look at. I have a number of standard plans that probably need to be looked at and updated. And so we do have that need, and I'll continue trying to request money in fiscal year budgets into my operating budget to look at our standard plans or do a review of our boilerplate specs. But right now, I don't have the budget or the staff capacity.
Would it be of assistance to you if we were to write a letter to the council suggesting that they allocate funds to update those plans?
Sure.
Because whether that will help or not, I don't know, but it gives a different voice echoing something that you may have already been pushing for, but coming from a very different source.
Yeah, I don't know if it would help or not. I'll continue to.
With this council, I have no
I-
idea.
And I'm going to go back to that's not what we've been tasked to do.
No.
We also have an obligation, I think, to, not that we have a lot of members of the public here in chambers this morning or necessarily online, but we do have an obligation to those folks to do what we've been tasked to do here. And we want to take that seriously and do that. And so,
Well,
I do have another question, Pime. I heard you say when we were talking about not have, we don't have the money to fund the revisions or the updating of engineering.
that's what I'm hearing.
And so my question there is, are you suggesting that money come from the PNS bucket?
I don't know that. I think it depends on how much, right? And then it would come before us.
Yeah, to me, it doesn't depend on how much. It's a hard no.
I would agree. It's a
Yeah,
hard no.
we cannot do that. I don't think we want to do that. Where we would, in my mind, get into a situation where we're going to lose the focus and the spirit of why the voters voted on PNS, and that was to give me a street that doesn't have potholes in it, to give me a street that's safe to drive on.
Yeah, see,
And how,
I
you know,
read that
how we
differently.
get to that point is, you know, if we start spending that money, there, to me, there's no end of the Pandora's box that could open.
Not if it's coming across our desk, and that's our purpose, is to review it and say yes or no.
Yeah, and again, that's
And
not our job.
as far-
Our
That-
job is
Isn't that our job? Isn't the spreadsheet full?
Our
of-
job was to say
dollars?
that money was spent correctly, not here's how you will spend that money correctly. It is not our job. It is that money was spent correctly.
I mean, a lot of this debate is, I would have two brief comments. The first one being, it depends on how expansively we want to read Section 3570. And it also mirrors an older debate that happened before I came to the committee about labor overhead that Rick were deeply engaged in when we're talking about expansion of utilization of PNS funds for things outside of hard infrastructure. And that's kind of the debate that he's raising again, just in a slightly different format. And so
I'm going to try to move us on a little bit and say, and when we get to committee member comments, I am going to ask that we agendize in our next meeting, having a letter go to the city council to request that they allocate some funds to review the plans and make sure we're doing the most current things possible, particularly as it relates to PNS funds. And when it comes, we either vote to do it or we don't.
And I would, and that's fine. And I would also strongly recommend, you know, whoever wants to take this and again, in front of the city council meeting to the people who are making those decisions and actually creating the funding to do things like that. And so, yeah, unless any last comments, I agree. It's probably time to move on in our agenda, but I want to make sure, Payam, that you're all
Thank
right.
you for taking the time for the discussion. I think just one, I'm reading here, the purpose of the Oversight Committee is to ensure to the public that the revenue created by the street infrastructure rehabilitation transactions and use tax are spent in good faith on Measure PNS. And to me, as a voter who voted for it, I'm concerned. And to me, that's not in good faith, and that's not the spirit of what I voted for. So that's my question, and that's my concern. You might think that's personal, and we can vote on that later. And I could still write a letter to council, because again, this is going to happen again, because we keep having measures, and they keep passing, and they keep increasing our taxes, and they keep forcing staff to move ahead with things before, frankly, I think they're ready, because they haven't had general funding to do the upgrades of things that they need to do for these measures that get forced down their throats, and they have to quick hire and do all these things and constraints. So I'm concerned about it in general with measures, and if we're about to do it with schools, probably the same problem is going to happen. We're doing it with this, and we're making moves that, to me, when I voted for it, I thought we're going to get the latest and greatest for the city, not back to as it was.
I would briefly say that good faith gives you a lot of leeway in terms of what you can do. I haven't read 3570 in a little while, but is that in the actual text of law? I see it as a gloss here. I'm just,
I don't
remember it.
I don't believe it's in there that way.
Okay. It can be, you can read things into it.
Yeah,
I hear you. Okay.
I currently served on 8 different oversight committees, and all of them, it's a case of after the fact, does it meet the wording of the list of projects? Now, the city has a bit more, even though it doesn't seem like it, is actually a whole lot more concise than when you look at school bonds or other things, where they literally put every single possible thing they could do anywhere to anything is listed.
But if you want to read implied good faith into it, then you've got a lot of room.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thanks for the discussion.
Thank you.
And I'm not sure that we need a vote on this, but yeah. Let's go ahead and move on to item 3 and receive unaudited expenditures from July 1st, 2024 through December 31st, 2024 for conformance to Measure PNS language.
Good morning. We are looking through July through December 2024 with revenues at $4,332,000, $2,880,000. Expenses at $2,863,277, leaving a fund balance of $449,583. And if we look from prior year of 2024 compared to FY 2025, revenues have gone down, but that's due to the fact of the reimbursement from Millbury, the $325,000. And then expenses are less than 2024, 2.8 million compared to 3.7 million in 2024. If we look at storm drain, vendor expense is $308,901.55, and labor with staff is $24,040.16 for a total of $322,941.71. We move on to sidewalks, invoices from vendors, $230,747.97. And salary expenses, $7,567.08 for a total of $238,315.05. We move to pavement, invoices from vendors, $1,862,031.26, and labor, $204,355 for a total of $2,066,386. We move to ADA invoices, $107,162.85 with labor, $100,000. I'm sorry. Right? Yeah, I guess so. That's a lot. $100,615 for a total of $207,778. And we move to the pavement on the tunnel was labor of $550.20, and the pump station for storm drain. They have invoices of $35,060 and labor of $2,244 for a total of $37,304. And I did update the notes on the front page. There was always some confusion. And so I did some digging into each project, and the money from Measure P was for the ADA curb ramps for the conference center construction, and the reso is noted. Same with the tunnel maintenance. There was 2 different resos that gave Measure P funding to the project. And then with North Fremont, it was for the ADA portion, and there were many different funding sources for that project. The pump station 11 at Lake Elistero, I've noted the reso in which the funding came from. And then I just made a note that the monthly sales tax payment are received 2 months in arrears from the state of California, just so when you think that we're kind of short, we're 2 months behind. And that's what I have for the financials.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, I've got a number of questions. On pavement, they're about the middle of the list. Interstate sales or impact Omega posts and turn bases. What are impact Omega posts and turn bases as it relates to pavement?
I don't know.
$1,090.10.
I suspect this is something our streets crew were purchasing under this account. My gut feeling is that's like posts and markers, but I will have to confirm with my streets crew. I don't know.
If you could, that'd be great. Yeah. And then maybe this was covered at a meeting I was not at, but I have a bit of an issue breaking out tunnel and pump stations and just getting a piece of a line item being spent out of that budget that's being allocated back to the measures. Because the measure is very specific. Now, yes, if it's pavement within the thing, why is it not in the pavement section of Measure P? Instead, we're taking a single line item or more out of a different set of budget and saying, oh, but it applies here. If you look at overall summary of what's been spent, those two line items are not what are in Measure P. Yes, maybe those things could be put in it and then should be in the Measure P account, not in a separate one.
So that did come up.
I think we brought up why was it in the one in the first place, and now we're breaking it out.
Yeah, why are we paying for tunnel maintenance? And we wanted to know what that meant.
But then it's not in the pavement, but it's pavement that we're paying for out of Measure P. And pump stations, but not in storm drains, which are in Measure P.
Yeah, which, I had a question too, on the pump station, segment of that, if that was, again, trying to determine if it falls under, the language of Measure P, is that for, pumps, or is it for this, pump structure? Or is it for,
Or is it a storm drain?
the
Which is what
drainage
was
portion
done.
of that? Yeah, what, and frankly, I'm not sure, again, according to the language, whether, storm drains certainly are, part of the language. Does that include an electric pump or a
Sure.
diesel pump, whatever it might be? Or what does it, and what were these projects?
Our storm drain system consists of a number of like about 50 miles of pipes, lift stations, man-made structures, so manholes, inlets. So that our storm drain utility has pumps, pump stations, lift stations, in addition to manholes, inlets, other types of structures, and storm drain pipes. It's not just pipes. The whole utility is comprised of, I guess, different types of assets. And that includes pump stations.
And personally, I could see where that falls under storm drains. Doesn't really
I
answer
do,
Rick's
but
question.
it's not in. It's not being charged against the budget for storm drains. It's Measure P. It's being charged against an entire different line item in the city's budget. And then when we're talking about the pavement in the tunnel, we're talking about labor from an employee. Doing what? And why is it not in the pavement section of Measure P? I'm just saying, to me, it's an accounting issue of it's not part of the, according to this document, it's not part of Measure P in the places that Measure P is being accounted for.
So I don't know if you want to talk about the funding accounts and CIPs, but it's Measure PS funds that are appropriated into a project-specific CIP account. And I think it's maybe different than it has been in the past. I suspect you'll see it more with a lot more of our projects that we start to move to a capitalized asset system where each individual project is probably going to have its own CIP account. So it is just a different way of accounting for it, but it is all still Measure PS funds. It's just shown in a project-specific CIP account rather than all kind of commingled into one giant Measure PS storm drain account. So that allows us to track real specific project expenditures to that pump station rather than having it all commingled into a giant pot of Measure PS storm drain funds. And
I think the pump station is a little bit cleaner because it's a very specific thing. But when we look at the tunnel, which is pavement and maintenance, is the title of the thing, and I've got some labor at $500 worth of labor. I'm having a hard time believing that's not part of a bigger pavement related project in the tunnel. If it is, it's part of the pavement of Measure P. That allocation, that financial account that it's going to is going to have a whole lot of other things in it besides just that labor. And I know the city does track everything back to each and every project because it's been a long time in NIP and every project had things assigned to it. So very clear, but the ballot measure set up very specific things to be sent on, and the line item description of where this is being booked for both of them is not in that ballot measure. Now, could money be spent on it potentially because we could call it that and then it's coming out of it? Fine. And if you need to do an accounting thing to move it out of that one where it's being accounted for by Measure P to have it go into another one to be there, a different animal. But right now, we have two line items in here we're being asked to say are consistent with the ballot measure. They are not. By definition, they are not. Not saying the work couldn't necessarily be classified as being that way, but they're not being accounted for that way. And how are we going to keep track of overall measure P and S and all the rest over time if we start having the beginning of what could be maybe 15 different line item accounts with small amounts going to that are part of bigger projects?
Are you saying, I mean, pump station repair? Because I see that under storm drains.
It is under, but it was under, it had it broken out separate here. So it was under.
Yeah, the one I'm looking at is under. storm
Pump,
drains,
but it's pump station 11 storm drains versus
just. storm drains.
versus the account, which is a different account number.
Yeah.
Which is their CIP 2508 compared to
33C 5054.
33C 15554, which is measure P. So by definition, by the way it's being accounted for, it's not measure P, but they're telling us they're using measure P for it. It's measure P.
Well, the project as a whole has other funding sources. And so when these reports are pulled, it's just any expense that's hit that project for that time period. So it would be, the project could be set up to have measure P expense lines that only get coded, but that would become engineering having to know the difference.
Like
and
the marina parking lots, perfect case. There's funds from multiple sources,
Yes.
each of which are done, and the marina parking lot piece of it showed up in our pavement related aspect of the pavement account here.
So
That's all I'm saying. Those may be things that could go, but they're not being booked that way. And if we keep down this path, instead of your nice little summary that gives us the 4 areas that gives the total that have been spent, we now have 2 other ones that really, why are they separate? I guess is the question from a tracking of the bond standpoint, or not
Not a bond,
matter
but-
standpoint.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I want to say it was $40,000 was all measure P put in, and this project's going to be well over that. So it's like we'd have to turn them
I'm
off.
just, and then, is it a line item that moves it to the other account? So it's showing in the place where the funds are coming out of that we're accounting for.
I'll take a look at these projects and see what can be done
Yeah.
to break.
Because
it up.
otherwise it's going to be, I mean, you're now going to have those other 2 line items each and every time moving forward. And it's like, it's a freaking mess.
yes.
It's just going to raise more questions than.
Well, it's a different way of accounting and presenting it. And I think, as I was saying earlier, I think you're going to see more of that moving forward. I know our finance department, public works are trying to ensure that we're capitalizing our assets when we're done with a CIP project. And the only way to do that is to actually have project specific CIP accounts set up. So maybe I can try to work with our team to figure out a way to present it so it's a little more intuitive.
To me, we have 4 account areas that we're in charge of monitoring,
Right.
not
And
6
those accounts,
and not 12. There's
are-
4.
well, yes, and they're set up as CIPs, but each one of these CIPs has numerous projects go into it. And so when they're all.
You get into one street paving thing, you've got all kinds of different stuff happening, and it could be coming from different sources.
Yeah.
Believe me, I understand the aspect of there's what you got to do in the accounting, and then what we have to do from a standpoint for the voters of overseeing the tax. And the tax didn't have those other 2 items as line items in it to be spending money. Tax had pavement, had storm drain, and if an integral part of what storm drain aspect of measure P is includes pump stations and things, they're in the storm drain section of it.
Sure.
Now you may have another way of moving the money over here to account for it for other aspects, but the measure P account is going to show it being spent on those things.
Yeah, so the measure PS account, the storm drain account, that's a CIP account. It's not
Everything is
like a
CIP,
revenue
isn't it?
account. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll try to figure out if there's maybe a better way of presenting it, because I think we are going to have to start tracking project specific expenditures, and that would be new CIP accounts rather than having just 4 for all the projects. So I'll have to work with our team to see if there's a better way of presenting it. And I had someone text me a response to the interstate sales Omega posts. Those are those little flexible delineator posts. So when we did like Lighthouse Curve, for example, and you have those
Okay.
little yellow tubes that had to get
That
remounted.
lasts about a month and a half before a car takes them out, but yes,
Yeah.
they're needed still. I mean, I'm not saying they're a waste, but yeah.
Yeah, they help,
Okay.
but yeah, they are intended to break away and flex, and they're cheap to replace.
Although if they didn't break away, it may keep cars from actually cutting the corners.
Possibly, but maybe those crashes would be a little bit more severe if they were fixed objects.
And then they'd sue the city for, even though they were drunk when they did it. And
Okay. So you'll come back to us with perhaps another scheme on how this is accounted for.
Yeah, I'll have to work with our finance department because we are getting pushed to move to more project specific CIPs rather than these accounts that have everything blended together. So I'll work with our team and see if there's a different way.
And Rick, are you confident that the original language prohibits adding an account that still falls under the?
well, but it's not. I've got labor being
I mean, I
listed
get-
under a thing that is payment and maintenance for the tunnel.
Yeah, I
don't know
get
if
your
that's a valid
concern
expenditure.
that, that this could.
Storm drain, the pumps. I can see an argument as part of the storm drain system, yeah, but we've had it very clear for a lot of years tracking the funds are, we have the buckets that the voters voted on. And these are the funds being spent on those buckets. And now we're having stuff outside of it. And the tunnel in particular is a real gray one.
Are you recommending that would just be labeled under lighthouse repairs instead of giving it a?
I mean, if indeed it was pavement, why isn't it in the pavement section? The pavement section.
Because it's harder and costs more. I don't know.
Well, to me, it's neither of those. It's
Well, that one maybe neither. I don't know what that really is. The
It's-
pump
it's-
station is a little
it's
cleaner.
to allow the city to manage those projects more effectively, is what I'm hearing.
I'm having a little issue with that because
Yeah, I get it.
30 years of accounting for projects that may be a $1,400 project and everything's being allocated to it, including labor time, has been ongoing for 30 years. That's not new.
Yeah, that's that's interesting. I mean, it's things that would have happened under a different budget. Shouldn't we just account for it through our total
Well,
budget?
and if the funds were used from here, yeah, it transfers out of this account and going towards it. I mean, we've had funds transfer in and out of this quite a few times where things have gotten reimbursed or other things have happened too.
So you'll come back to us on that.
Yeah, I'll talk to our finance department and see if maybe there's a different way of presenting it. It is just an accounting exercise.
It isn't because the voters, when they voted on this, they were given the specific thing is, we're going to fix all of our streets. Okay. Well, if we're fixing the street that's running through the tunnel, okay. But when storm drains were presented to the public as a need to be in there, it was because we have the age of them, they're going to be collapsing and all the rest. There was no thought of it also means pump stations at Elistero and other. Technically, yes. I mean, I get it. But what the public thought they were voting for, which, and in all honesty, I didn't support the measure because it included things that were not streets. My argument to staff was, is this going to have enough money if it's 100% of streets to fix all of them? And the answer was no. So then my comment was, then why are we not spending 100% of it on it? And then, instead of making it not do everything it could do because we want to now have it be on 4 things. But very clear how it was presented to the public on storm drains was the storm drains that we all think of as the public of, what's on the corner, what's there, the ones that are the axle busters in New Monterey, the ones that were all of the pictures of the corrugated pipe that was failing and all the rest that was used to sell the measure was the storm drains, not the storm drain system. But it's gray area. I'm not going to sit here and it doesn't make sense because if those pumps fail, there's a lot of things going to be flooding versus, I get it. But to me, it's part of, if it is part of the storm drains that are funded by P, it should be under the P's funding for storm drains.
Okay. Well,
I think I beat this one to death.
Thank you. Yeah, I can't disagree. All right, just a couple other quick questions I have under sidewalks. I just want to make sure that the two that stood out for me were parks and schools. Just ensuring that these are city-owned,
Yes.
city-responsible sidewalks.
So there was 2 work orders that would have been issued to Precision Cutting. They're a company that specializes in like a diamond blade saw that comes and cuts uplifts. So any uplifts near parks, so city parcels, that would be city responsibility, or near schools that was near a city parcel or maybe caused by a city tree that were city responsibility. They came in there and they cut off those sections to eliminate the trip hazard. It's still, the sidewalk might be uplifted, but the vertical separation between one panel and the next, that might be a trip hazard, has been removed. If it was someone else's responsibility, they marked it with orange paint, logged it, and then we sent out letters. So those are those 2 work orders.
Thank you. Anything else from the committee on the report? Let's see. I guess we should ask for any public comment.
No public comment.
Okay, in that case, I'd be looking for a motion to receive this report.
I'll make a motion that we find all areas of this report, with the exception of the 2 that we beat to death a minute ago, as being consistent, and continue those 2 pending figuring out how we're going to handle them correctly. Because to me, as they are right now, they're not being booked in as your PNS.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? And we already asked for public comment. Go ahead and take a vote, please, Lisa.
Rick Aldinger,
Yes.
Justin Cheng,
Yes.
Carol Trabajian, Rick Hoyer,
Yes.
Payam Ostavar.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Passes unanimously. Item 4, review unaudited periodic report for July 1st, 2024 to December 31st, 2024.
Alrighty. Again, the July through December total for revenue, 4,332,860, with a total overall for Measure P, $99,230,081. The expenses for July through December is $2,883,277, for a total expense overall $80,473,166, leaving a fund balance overall for the whole Measure P, $18,756,000, and I'm sorry, $756,915. And year over year, this FY 25, $4,332,860 compared to FY 24 of $4,608,820. Expenses for FY 25, $2,883,277 compared to FY 24 with the same period, $3,737,535, leaving a total fund balance of $1.4 million for FY 25 compared to the fund balance for FY 24 of $873,284.
I just want to make sure, total fund balance is going to be, isn't in the total money in the bank right now, 80,473,166. The 2.8 million is just the delta, but isn't the total fund balance at this point 80 million? Am I misreading that?
The 80 million is the total expenditures over the years.
Okay.
So the difference between 99 million and the 80 is the $18,756,000.
So that is the actual fund
fund
balance,
balance.
as opposed to, whereas the others, the previous ones are not really fund balances.
Yeah.
They're the
Over.
profit or loss for that year.
Correct.
Okay.
Got it. Okay.
Correct. So, thank you.
Did you have anything else, Rick?
No, there was wanting clarification on the fund balance versus just profit or loss.
So please continue. Or is that it?
That's it.
Okay. Any other comments, questions from the committee? Be looking for a motion to receive that report.
I'll move to accept the report.
Second.
Any discussion on that? Do we have any public comment, Lisa?
No public comment.
Okay, a vote, please.
Rick Aldinger,
Yes.
Justin Chang,
Yes.
Carol Turbagian, Rick Hoyer,
Yes.
Payam Osnivar.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Passes unanimously with those present. Item 5, review street rehabilitation reconstruction reports for 2025.
All right, so that's me. So we have the same attachments that have been updated from previous reports. The first one is the upcoming Measure PS paving projects. So you can see all the planned resurfacing and rehab projects we have for this year. RSR 2425 is going to tackle sections of David Avenue, Forest Ridge, Ocean Avenue, Ramona, and then a few residential streets. Then Hawthorne is slated for more extensive repairs. It's part of Road Rehab 5, which is out contracting right now. And should be probably going on later this year or this summer. So that are a summary of the upcoming paving projects. Anyone have any questions on that one?
I have just
Sure.
happened to notice a minor spelling
Oh,
error. Divisadero, I think, is with an E, DE, which I know just can obviously, and that's consistent. I've seen it at least 3 or 4 times, but
okay.
Um,
I'll take a look at that.
hinder any of your searches in the future or something if you're doing that.
The next one, this should have been available in PDF and Excel, is the 18-page summary of the city's current street saver database. I do know that during the last meeting, someone had pointed out a couple of errors that I don't think we have had the chance to update yet. So there's still a street or 2 that are showing up as 0 in here. But aside from those small errors, this was recently overhauled by a consultant team who did a visual inspection of all of our city streets. So this should be relatively accurate, with the exception of those couple of street segments that are still showing up as 0. Fairground Road is one.
A question on page 3, Calle Principal at Jefferson. Is that what's going on now? The construction is going on now? Is that Jefferson?
Yeah, I was curious in what's paying for that work, which is eliminating a section of the street and making it a little park like in the corner. And
So it's
like to me,
eliminating,
it was like totally unnecessary work being done, but
well, eliminating the slip lanes. So we had a whole presentation that went to city council about this project, did some outreach. It's consistent with the downtown vibrancy plan. So the project's eliminating those slip lanes, which allows drivers to just kind of bypass the intersection, take a shortcut. Those slip lanes are being closed off and all the traffic's being directed to more of a traditional 4-way stop intersection, or in this case, 3-way stop intersection. And the ADA pedestrian ramps were being upgraded. And then we're eliminating those crossings where pedestrians would have to cross, like an additional conflict point with drivers who are just bypassing the intersection. So the sidewalks are being extended where you no longer have to cross the street at Calle Principal. And I believe that is Polk Street where the other slip lane was eliminated. And the intersections are kind of being teed off to a more traditional intersection.
also means we lose the ability to drive up to a mailbox and drop our mail in.
We are
Which is
working.
really nice.
Yeah, we've been working with the post office, which isn't always an easy task. They have proposed a new location for that drop box that's no longer going to be drive up accessible, even though we did have options on Polk Street. So that box is going to be relocated next to Marigold Properties. It'll be faced into the sidewalk rather than
Yeah,
toward the
which is
street.
like, so who cares at that point? Defeats the purpose of the drive up mailbox.
That is what the post office wanted.
Yeah.
Indeed, it does.
So regarding that all sounds incredibly positive. I'm overwhelmingly approve removing of slip lanes and making it more pedestrian friendly. So were you saying that was part of Measure?
Yes,
CP?
this is all part of an ADA improvement project. So with the elimination of the slip lanes, there's like 4 less ramps that are there, and it's now just a continuous sidewalk. And then the intersection itself, all the pedestrian ramps along the intersection are all going to be ADA compliant at this point or after the project.
So that entire project is an ADA project that's Measure P.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a question for me as well.
To
And
me, it's not. Have we seen funds on that yet?
There's definitely design funds that have been spent. I know we are in construction. I don't think I doubt we've caught up on the building, but yes, we have spent money on the design, and the project, the overall purpose and need of that project was ADA improvements, ADA upgrades. And so I know we've eliminated those slip lanes as part of the project, and that was to eliminate essentially 4 non-compliant ramps and convert it into a traditional sidewalk.
What's the cost difference between replacing 4 ramps and that project?
I don't think there was ever any analysis that compared ramp replacements versus the overall project.
yeah, it just doesn't seem like that falls under street or sidewalk or ADA rehabilitation. It sounds like it's a new project that happens to create some of that, but it's not a rehabilitation of existing infrastructure.
But was it already, it's already part of your new standards for that type of,
They could have
Location.
fixed the ADA issues of the non-compliant ramps. That's what I'm saying. Question is that this is the same cost of fixing those ramps.
You
That's
might-
one thing.
you might not have been able to, but yeah.
I don't know.
Is that the case?
You know, I don't know.
Agree. It may not.
Yeah,
It's just to me, I'm dubious when you have a thing that starts looking like a really more beautification issue versus other things, but
the
It's safety and I don't
Right.
call it beautification, but yeah.
ADA standards are kind of a nuanced thing. So I don't know if there would have been grading problems if we had tried to do more traditional ramps. Definitely, it gets a lot easier when you're staying at one level rather than trying to transition back and forth. The beautification side, we didn't incorporate any beautification things. The museum is actually is advocating for a more substantial project, but we really just kept it to the purpose and need was having an ADA compliant intersection. That's what we're doing. I know that there's museum or others that kind of want to do more placemaking, more beautification, but we didn't do any like the beautification components of this project. Really, the purpose and need was ADA compliance at the intersection, and that's kind of where we stopped the project. There are different visions on what that corner should be, but once the project had the ADA compliant sidewalks and the ramps, and we had achieved ADA compliance, that's where the project stopped. So there's ideas for future phasing that wouldn't be Measure PS eligible.
I'm in favor. I'm just gonna be I'm in favor of this type of thing. That's exactly what I thought I was voting for, was improving these things based on codes and standards. It's removing pavement, which will be cost savings in the future. It's improvements for pedestrians in the city. I think this is a great thing to be hopefully doing and spending some funds on. Again, it's all in the devil's in the details of that wording and what that is. I think staff, to me, it seems like there very likely were issues with grades, and if you have to get the right ramp distance and all that, and that improves that. I haven't seen it yet personally. I should go by right now, but I think that's
great.
I think, this is a question in my mind. I don't know. I think that ultimately I'm going to support this as falling under the Measure PNS as you've justified, and that satisfies me on this particular project. But I think it's something that, again, this is exactly why we're here, is to make sure that we don't fall into a situation. And I think when we're contemplating projects and looking at changing something, as opposed to rehabbing, I think that absolutely warrants further preliminary discussion, probably from this group in advance, if it's straying from rehab, which this one, in my mind, does. I accept your reasoning for that in this case.
I just would like to know the difference, because my initial reaction was, oh, this is a beautiful area. I didn't even think of anything related to storm drains or traffic flow or anything else. It was like, to me, when I see it, it's a beautification of the area.
Mhm.
I accept what you're saying with the four things, and it does clean up the intersection tremendous.
All
that's
positive
great.
things,
All positive things, but
however.
which is flow and safety. And so, I mean, again, I think
Mhm.
we would like to give staff leeway to
I-
make these sort of choices and improvements. What I think these two gentlemen in particular are asking for is just without unreasonable time on your own efforts, is to just explain these types of things. This was done because.
well, and
it
to
fit.
me is, we couldn't do the others, or this would be about the same cost as the other. Hey, if you get the side benefits, the other things too, great.
Correct.
But
Yep.
we're trying to make these funds also spread and fix as many of the ADA things as possible. And if this was double of what it could have been done for, then maybe that other double should come from another budget, the other half of it,
Yes.
to
If
meet
possible,
the same
yeah.
goals. I don't know. That's the
Yeah, without unreasonably hindering your
Yeah.
team, a quick explanation for things like that are changing is in the future. That's Appreciate it.
It's probably in the similar vein as when we're doing the bulb outs and the traffic calming features. It's when we're working on these designs, if we're doing the ADA compliance, if we're having to demo these corners and rebuild them,
correct.
generally eliminating slip lanes at intersections is kind of the best practices for ADA compliance, for traffic safety, for just.
Could you define what a slip lane is
Oh,
for us
I'm
non-traffic engineers?
I could
Sorry.
draw-
I know what they eliminated, but to me,
Draw it
they're
for
two very different things that were eliminated.
Yeah,
I'll equate them as the same.
I think they're sometimes referred to as pork chops or pork chop islands.
That help you?
I'm trying to think of maybe some of the more common terms, but
It's a right turn lane that allows you to skip past the traffic that's going straight.
yeah.
So you can turn
Well,
right.
one of those
But-
is that way, but the main one that got me on this that didn't do that. The one that the street area where the mailbox is wasn't like the other one that got replaced, where it was very, very clean, straight through and no stop or anything else. That I do believe there was a stop sign at. So to me, that was the end of that street where it met Jefferson.
Yeah.
Cali P and Jefferson intersection was there, because then the other is hard now.
Yeah, they're,
All right.
they're notorious for killing pedestrians and cyclists and things like that. But yeah.
In the interest of time, I'm hoping we can move on and get a motion to receive the report.
So moved.
Receive the report. Yeah.
Second.
Any discussion? Any public comment, please?
No public comment.
Vote, please.
Rick Aldinger,
Yes.
Justin Chin,
Yes.
Carol Trabajian, Rick Hoyer,
Yes.
Payam Ostavar.
Yes.
Thank you.
So on item number 6, continue the marina paving project discussion is something we asked for. And I want to just do a check-in at this point. It's 8 minutes after 11. Are we okay to continue and finish up the last 2 agenda items here this morning? Okay,
Okay.
seeing no objections to that, let's go ahead and bring back that discussion. And I don't know if you folks, staff has anything for us on this to address some of the things that we brought up previously.
Sure, there's no formal presentation. I know we had provided that exhibit previously. I did watch the last meeting, which I wasn't able to attend. So I'm kind of aware of the questions that are going to be asked. I'm happy to try to answer them, try to get to some consensus on the item. The item, there was a lot of discussion, is this a city street? It is. It's a city street that's, I think you guys were probably after, is it right of way? Is it dedicated right of way? And the answer is no. It's a city street that runs through a parcel. it connects Figueroa to Washington. We have several city streets that are in parcels, and vice versa. We have parcels that aren't city streets. So Pearl is maybe a great example, or our cemetery roads. These are streets that are considered Measure PS fundable or eligible. They're not dedicated right of way, which is areas like that are set up aside for movement of traffic and people, but they are city streets in the sense that they're connector streets that connect one location to the next. So I know when Measure S was written, it was intended to be a little bit more flexible than Measure P, to essentially to capture things like this. Are these kind of unique scenarios where we don't want overly rigid guidelines that we say, okay, we can't use these funds. I know that the ballot measure was intentionally written to be a little bit more flexible to allow the use of these funds for projects such as this. So I don't know if I made it shades of gray, if I made it worse or if I tried to clear it up, but it's not right of way, but it is a city street.
Specifically for me on this project, it's kind of the same thing that on the Jefferson Street kind of issue we just discussed. Was there a street there before? I'm sorry, I don't remember. Was there a street there that got rehabbed, or in the parking lot redesign was a new street created? And again, that kind of is the distinction for me. As I see Measure P and S funds there for rehabbing streets, not building new ones.
I don't think there's ever been what we would think of as a street there.
Probably part of the
I mean,
parking lot.
Yeah, it's could you drive through the parking lot some and come up to, along the coast and come out the other side by the front of the wharf? Yes.
Mhm.
Generally not allowed, but you could. And maintenance vehicles and other things would do it. So we think of as a street, not really, but it technically be.
We had that plan last time. We don't have it in this packet, right? Is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah, to me, it was just the edge of the parking lot that you would use to enter or exit the parking lot. I get that. It would function as the place to drive your car. Today, or in 15 years from now, or whenever it is, when that now street needs rehabilitation, I would say, we built a new street. It needs to be maintained, and that falls under PNS or whatever it might be in 15 years from now. But in this project, it was a parking lot, and the city chose to probably very wisely build a street there. And so I just question whether it falls under the guardrails of PNS.
Well, I'd say again, if you're like you have been doing, is using that wording, if it's been designated as a street by the city, then it is.
Street.
Now, now should it have been designated as street or part of access to the parking lot and therefore somebody else's parcel and responsibility? Maybe not, but that's not in our purview. If it's been identified as a city street, then I guess by all means it is. I might disagree with having done that as well, but it would seem that if it's identified, and you've answered our question in that regard.
And I can accept that. One thing that caught my ear, you said cemetery roads. Are we talking, do we have city-owned cemeteries?
Yes.
And they're
One of them is, one of them isn't.
Yeah, so the paving that allows you to travel through the cemetery falls under PNS.
Yeah, so we have streets and city parcels, such as the cemetery or in parks, like around El Estero, that are city-owned streets. Again, not right of way, but they're in a parcel that are streets that we need to maintain. So, looking at the language of the ballot measure that didn't specifically say must be right of way or must be, it really just said city streets. I think those are eligible expenses. We do have some maintenance needs coming up. The committee really felt strongly that perhaps this language doesn't fit the ballot measure. Maybe we should have a discussion before we start advancing those projects. But I think that the language of the ballot measure, which was intentionally left open to be a little bit more flexible than the measure P, was deliberate so that we could kind of tackle these types of situations.
So, and for me to be consistent with my previous comments here this morning, I'm not looking for more ways to discuss design attributes of upcoming projects for this committee. I do at this time anyway, want to make sure that we are doing what I believe our task is, and that's to make sure that monies that were spent according to PNS language.
To me, what this really shows is we need to be very careful because S was meant to be a renewal of P, and apparently it wasn't. It changed things. And so when the next renewal comes, I think at least I'm going to be looking at a comparative of wording to wording if it's being called a renewal to see what the difference. Not saying it doesn't make sense what happened, but I doubt anyone here thought that there were any changes to it.
Yeah. Any other comments or questions? Okay. I just to double check any public comment on this item.
No public comment.
Okay, and I don't think we need to take a vote on anything here. So that brings us to our final agenda item of a sales tax update for Q2.
Okay, so this is covering April through June of 2024. And the comparative to 2023, the sales tax went down 9.6% over the same time frame. Restaurants and hotels are our biggest contributor, and there was a slight decrease in their revenues. And also with general consumer goods, there was a decline. Business and industry, auto and transportation, and building and construction, there were declines in the comparative of 2023 to 2024. And in Monterey County, there was also a 0.03 decline over a comparable time, but the Central Coast region was up 0.5. And that's about all I have on that. Sorry.
Thank you for that. Because Carol couldn't be here this morning, I just would be remiss if I didn't point out that hospitality, look what hospitality does for the vitality of the city.
It's huge.
Any questions or bizarre comments from the rest of the committee?
I've just got a question. Edge's Electrical Group, who the heck are they? They're in the top 25 sales tax producers.
Well, yeah, good point.
I've never heard of them.
I don't know who that is either. Anyone? Justin? Bam?
No.
Know who this
I mean, it's like, okay.
Good for them.
I mean, more power to them, but it's like, okay.
Maybe just a brief comment that seems like a decent time if you were thinking about it to spread some money around Main Street if you're interested. Also, for any community members that are needing financing, you can also look to your portfolio for margin. And if you're really in trouble, you can also take a look at 72T. That's about all I got.
Thank you. And then there's nothing else on it. Be looking for a motion to accept this report.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? Any public comment?
No public
And
comment.
vote, please.
Rick Aldinger.
Yes.
Justin Chang.
Yes.
Carol Trabajian. Rick Hoyer.
Yes.
Chaim Ostavar.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Passes unanimously with those present. Any committee member comments before we wrap up this morning? Mr. Hoyer.
Yeah, I'd like to do what I indicated before. I'd like to request we put on next committee's agenda, doing a letter to the city council requesting that they fund a review of the standard drawings, standard plans for the city to make sure that what we're doing, particularly spending PNS funds, is something that's going to be last and it's the most current possible.
Second.
Discussion? We don't need to vote on this. So it's just a request and I'm sure that will be honored.
Oh, I mean, because we're deciding together that we're going to talk about it at least. I guess,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Put it on the
We're gonna
agenda so that we
agendize it.
could vote to put a letter to,
Got it.
because we can't agendize to do something that's not on the agenda.
I guess because
Yeah, we can talk about it and then make a
Discuss
motion.
it a
We
little
could make a
further.
motion to do the letter.
and by then,
By then,
There
we
won't
will
be
have
any
built
more-
$1 million for the storm drains.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
With that, we're going to go ahead and adjourn today's meeting at 11:21. Thank you, everyone, for helping get through this. And we look forward to seeing you next quarter.